Claude by Anthropic has held, I think, a close second place for most reliable and free chat-based AI tool. So it is a generative AI tool that competes with ChatGPT, Microsoft Bing, Grammarly Go, Google Bard, just to name a few. And what makes Claude different is Anthropic's primary focus on the 3 H's, so helpful, honest, and harmless. Now, all of the chat-based AI tools strive to meet the 3 H's, but Claude is trained to be much more conversational instead of transactional. This does not mean that it's the perfect companion by any means. It's just that Claude tries to make itself more helpful, opposed to solely generating answers to our prompts. At the time of recording, Claude offers free and paid versions. The paid version is $20 a month. The major difference is your ability to have longer conversations. You'll get greater or more reliable access during peak hours and have the ability to try new features before official release. So before we dive into Claude, I want to highlight the free and the paid version of Claude. There's no difference in the quality of the tool, unlike, say, ChatGPT, which is currently GPT 3.5 or GPT 4, where they have different functionalities, or we'll say quality, and the AI's training, so GPT-4 being a lot more optimized and more efficient or more effective, and then GPT 3.5 still being an incredibly impressive tool, but not nearly as advanced or effective as the paid version. So with Claude, even on the free version, you still get all the same features. You can have chats, you can upload documents, all the cool stuff. So let's quickly dig in. Here are our demo prompts that we've been using for these different generative AI chat tools. We're going to do some outlining and brainstorming. We're going to put on our student hat and maybe seek a summarization on something that was difficult in class. So try to get AI to explain something to us. And then finally, we're going to see if it can help us save a little bit of time with some course design, and we're going to create a rubric. So let's dig into Claude. So Claude does require an account, but once you sign in, this is the screen that we will get. So let's start off with our first prompt. So let's develop an activity for a college level calculus course about the limits of a function. So again, way faster than I can type. But at first glance so far, while it's generating an answer, it's pretty impressive. It's creating us a lesson plan, essentially. So let's let it finish, and we'll sort of glance through it before moving on to the second prompt. So pretty quick response, and as a reminder, anything that we do with these generative AI tools, it's important that we proofread it. We're not going to go through this activity, but it does have all the important things. So we asked for it to develop an activity for class, and so it's given us a starting point for an intro that we would share with our students, a reminder on what we need to perform to participate in the activity, and then it breaks down the activity in the different steps, and then it does a pretty okay job at giving us a conclusion of what we've got going on. So for a starting point, this is not terrible. One thing I do want to highlight, it's been said in a couple other places, is with a lot of these generative AI chat tools, when we're trying to do stuff with teaching and learning, if we're not specific about the modality of our classroom, it tends to default in its response that all teaching and learning happens in a face-to-face classroom. So be mindful as you're trying to find ways for generative AI to save us time, that we need to be specific with our prompts. So let's move on to our second demo prompt. And let's put on our student hat, pretend that we just got out of class and there was a difficult concept that we need a little bit of help with. And so for this one, we're going to ask Claude to explain the hero's journey in Star Wars, and let's ask it to provide us some sources for us to explore later on as we try to better understand the hero's journey. Cool. So that was pretty quick. The first thing I noticed is Claude's tried to give us some web links and then definitely included this note here that not all links work and that they may not be accurate. And so that is an important note that Claude was trained on a large sample of the internet, not the full internet, just a huge sampling of it, which means that it did touch websites, but that doesn't mean that when it's generating a response, it's actually going to give us real websites. Now, StarWars.com is a real website, but it also doesn't mean that these links work. I don't condone clicking on random links, but let's just try one and see if it works before we take a look at our response. So it looks like that link did work. Let's go back and look at our response. So Claude did a pretty good job. It took the 3 parts of the hero's journey and gave us some really brief summaries. So if we needed to dig in further, we could continue the conversation with Claude and ask it to further explain some of the details in their response. So to wrap up this video, let's move on to our final demo prompt and see if Claude can help save us a little bit of time with course design. So we're going to create a rubric with explanations for each criterion level for a college film history course. And so far, at first glance, pretty good. It's creating our rubric as a table. Now, if we wanted to be more specific, we could tell Claude how many criterion levels we wanted. So instead of 4, we could have said maybe 3 or 5. But if we were trying to save time and quickly build a rubric for papers for our film history class, this would not be a terrible starting point. So we'll let Claude finish and then we'll scroll. So it's done a nice job of explaining some things at the bottom. And if we scroll up, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 criterions, 4 levels for each one, and some small, or I should say brief explanations. And so, like I said, this is a good starting point. We could copy and paste this into a Google Doc or Microsoft Word doc, make some revisions to ensure that it matches and aligns with our assignment. And then if we wanted to, we could copy and paste each of these criterion levels into CourseDen and use the rubric tool to help us with grading. So that was a hopefully somewhat brief demonstration and explanation of Claude. Pretty cool tool. As a reminder, Claude is one of the few AI chatbots that really puts a lot of emphasis on the fact that it does not touch the internet. It was trained on data from the internet, but is not actively using the internet to generate its responses. It is a language model, and so it uses its training data to generate the most likely appropriate response to our prompts.